Hello, I'm Emma Louise Coffey and you're welcome to the Dairy Edge, the Teagasc Dairy podcast. We're bringing you the latest information, insights and opinion to improve dairy farm performance. It's that time of year again when the National Dairy Conference is held. On Tuesday the 27th of November in Rochestown Park in Cork and Wednesday the 28th of November in the Hudson Bay in Athlone. There is a great lineup of speakers covering a range of topics including economic and social sustainability and management of non-replacement dairy stock. Tom O'Dwyer tells us more.
So we've reverted to a format which we've used in previous years involving a plenary session in the morning. So all the participants, all the audience are in the main room. And then following lunch, we break the audience down into smaller groups where they can attend one of 6 workshops. And each of those 6 workshops will be repeated 3 times over the course of the afternoon. So attendees at the Dairy Conference will be able to choose the 3 workshops from the 6 listed that they'd like to attend once they're at the time of booking.
And the title this year is Making Dairy Farming More Sustainable. What does that mean to you?
Well, I suppose for me, sustainability is about 3 elements. The farmer has to make a profit, so farming has to be economically sustainable. Secondly, the farm has to be environmentally sustainable, so it has to be producing milk and meat without harming the environment. And thirdly, it has to be socially sustainable, and that's both for the farmer himself in terms of workload, work-life balance and so on, but also about the farmer's role in the community, the farm's role in the community, and if the farm then is large enough, the number of employees on the farm, how they're treated and what their working arrangements are like. So that's the 3 elements, financial, environmental and economic. And I think the challenge is to have dairy systems that are sustainable. So in other words, that are providing a good living, are meeting economic sustainability, that are not harming the environment, in fact are probably improving the environment. And thirdly, that the farmer and anybody working on the farm has good working conditions and has an opportunity to develop and grow while working on the farm.
I guess we're all quite aware of the economic sustainability of farming and, trying to make a profitable business. If we look at the environmental sustainability, I see one of the workshops are focusing on greenhouse gases and ammonia emissions. So what do we expect from that?
So I think what you can expect from that workshop is that the presenters will focus on the steps that dairy farmers can take to try and reduce their greenhouse gas and ammonia emissions. Work by Teagasc researchers has shown that the increase in stock numbers is challenging Ireland to meet its environmental targets in relation to greenhouse gases and ammonia. But the same work has also identified the steps which farmers can take to try and mitigate our emissions or reduce our emissions. And the challenge is that more farmers need to start taking those steps. So, for example, in relation to emissions, switching to protected urea would make a big difference to ammonia emissions, I think. Spreading slurry with a trailing shoe would also make a big difference to ammonia emissions. So the more farmers that switch in that direction, we reduce our emissions. Now, we still have the challenge of increasing cow numbers. So, we can reduce emissions with the same number of cows, that's a positive. But if cow numbers go up, and even if we take the steps to reduce the emissions, if cow numbers are going up, we're still going to have a bit of a challenge. But at least we should be starting to make the changes that will reduce our emissions with our current herd size.
Okay, so hopefully, people who engage with that workshop will have maybe a toolbox of what they can target on their farms in terms of improving environmentally. And then if we look at the social sustainability side of things, you mentioned workload, and that's something we're looking at a lot in Teagasc. Yeah. But I guess making our dairy farms a better place is a workshop that will be on in the afternoon. What can people expect from that?
So, as you know, Emma Louise, an increasing number of dairy farmers now are employing labour. As farm size increases, there's an increased reliance for non-family labour. And I suppose this is new for many dairy farmers. They would have grown up on farms where labour was provided by family members. And I suppose once you're employing people, well, number one, you have to try and find them and recruit them. And in order to do that, you have to know what you want them to do. And then once you have employed and recruited and employed them, well, then you have to manage them as they work from day to day on your farm. And that takes an additional range of skills which, maybe some farmers are challenged with in terms of managing an employee. So I'd imagine that what I'd expect from that workshop is that, again, that farmers will be left with some ideas or tips that will, it might be the one or two things that they can change on their farm that could make a significant difference. So, for example, it could be around rostering. So if you're working as a farmer and you have two employees working on the farm, maybe one of them is a relief milker and the other is a full-time employee, how are you rostering the time on which they work? Do they all work all days of the week or all hours of the day? So that's something that farmers need to get their head around. And there are other things as well, but that's the example that comes to mind.
It's interesting. You mentioned when you're recruiting staff, what do you actually want them for? And that's something Ed Payne would have picked up on in terms of what's really important when they're creating a job spec on their farm. I guess I'm really interested in session 2. I see that it's focusing on the management of non-replacement stock on your farm and how you can best manage them. We have a guest speaker from Australia, Natalie Roadknight. Have we some background on her? What can people expect to hear based on her expertise?
So Natalie is a vet and she works in the University of Melbourne in a department there that looks at animal welfare. And she works with Andrew Fisher, who actually completed a Walsh Fellowship with Teagasc 25 years ago. So I suppose that's the connection with Teagasc, I guess. I suppose the reason we invited Natalie to join the conference is to find out a little bit more about how they deal with the non-replacement dairy calf on Australian dairy farms. As you may know, Emma Louise, in Australia and New Zealand, they have a bobby calf industry. And so Natalie is going to be talking about that and, the steps that they've put in place in Australia to make sure that system is run well and that the calves are looked after prior to slaughter. May not be something that we may be comfortable talking about at the moment, but the reality is that our dairy herd size is increasing. There may not be a market or a value for calves that are born. So, we just have to explore what potential options are out there, and look to see what's happening in other countries. So that's Natalie Roadknight. The other papers there, are looking at the new Dairy Beef Index, so Andrew Cromie of ICBF, and that hopefully would allow dairy farmers to select better bulls for use in the second half of the breeding season, so that the calves that are generated later in the breeding season at least are of a better quality for a calf to beef enterprises. So they have maybe better potential in terms of growth, conformation, and so on. And the third paper there is from Stephen Butler, and it's looking at the results from the recent on-farm research trial around sex semen. So there was a trial carried out this summer on farms, and Stephen is going to present the results of that. Again, does sex semen have a role to play in terms of the crop of calves that we produce each spring? And I guess, farmers will have to come along to the conference at the end of the month to find out the results of that trial. And
I guess, Tom, you're on the lineup. You're scheduled to speak at the conference. What will you be talking about?
Okay, so given the 12 months we've had with weather, we felt that it was appropriate to present a paper reflecting on experiences of 2018 in terms of milk production and the weather challenges. And just in preparing for the presentation, I was just looking up some material, and I came across a quote which runs along the lines that we don't learn from experience, we learn from the reflections on experience. So really it's to prompt people just to think back about, the summer, April, the spring, and including last October when we had the high winds. Because even in doing that myself, I found myself, oh, right, that happened, because in my mind, and I'm sure a lot of other individuals are the same, it's the drought that's forefront to my mind. But then when I was looking back at what happened in April, I said, oh yeah, that's right, that happened too. And then Storm Emma with all the snow, oh yeah, right, that was as bad as that. I'd forgotten how severe it was. And I think, we're all individuals. I think a lot of people are like that. So, it's an opportunity just to reflect and maybe draw some learnings out of the experiences with weather this year.
And I suppose finally, Tom, it's the most important thing. When's it on? Where is it on?
Okay, so thanks for asking me that question. So it's taking place on Tuesday the 27th of November in Cork, the Rochestown Park Hotel, and Wednesday the 28th of November in the Hudson Bay Hotel in Athlone. Both events are Department of Agriculture KT approved events. So dairy farmers who are participating in the KT group scheme will get credit for attending. Booking is on our website, www.teagasc.ie/Dairy Conference 2018. There's a booking page there, and you can click. And as I said earlier in the interview, Emma Louise, as you're booking, you have to choose the 3 workshops that you'd like to attend in the afternoon, so that we can manage the numbers. We would appreciate if people would book early, so that for catering and other arrangements. So.
And I guess it's important to book early to get into the workshops of your choice too.
Yes, that would be good advice too, yeah.
That's great, Tom. Looking forward to it.
Thank you very much, Emma Louise.
That's it for this week's episode of the Dairy Edge podcast, and my thanks to Tom O'Dwyer for joining me on this week's show. Don't forget to subscribe on Apple and Google Podcasts and Spotify, and for more information go to the Teagasc website at teagasc.ie. I'm Emma Louise Coffey, and join me next time for your Dairy Edge.